Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Gnanativinandasya Gnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurunmitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshnaaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanand. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jainmudire Nashpatraya Shobhadresh Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtiki. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 5 Chapter 11 Verse 8. Gunanuraktam Vyavasana Janto Kshemaya Nirgunyamato Manasyat यथा प्रदीपो घृतवर्तिमा अश्नन् शिखा सधूमा भजति ह्यन्यदा स्वं पदं तथा गुणकर्मानुबद्धं वृत्तिर्मनः प्रयतेऽन्यत्र तत्त्वम्. When the living entity's mind becomes absorbed in sense gratification of the material world, it brings about his conditioned life and suffering within the material situation. However, when the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. When the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. But when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering. And when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about original brightness of Krishna consciousness. Purport: it is therefore concluded that the mind is the cause of material existence and liberation also. Everyone is suffering in this material world because of the mind. It is therefore proper to train the mind or to cleanse the mind from material attachment and engage it fully in the Lord's service. This is called spiritual engagement. It's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mam cha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahmbhoyaya kalpate. Abhyabhicharena bhakti yogena. Full or undeviated, uninterrupted, pure. When one engages in such devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, meaning irrespective of what the situation is, he continues his bhakti yoga. At once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Sagunan samatitya. So this is the answer to Krishna's statement, Traigunya Vishaveda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. How to become Nistraigunya? Gunan samatitya Brahma Bhoyaya Kalpate is Avyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena. So one has to engage in full devotional service. One who engages in full devotional service does not fall down in any circumstance. So we should also not fall down. Engages in full devotional service does not fall down in any circumstance. At once transcends. We should engage the mind fully in Krishna conscious activities. Then it will be the cause of our liberation, for our returning home back to Godhead. However, if we keep the mind engaged in material activities for sense gratification, it will cause continuous bondage and will make us remain in the material world in different bodies, suffering the consequences of our different actions. And so we can't keep the mind engaged in material activities for sense gratification. We can engage in material activities, but we should not keep the mind engaged in material activities for sense gratification. And then it will cause continuous bondage. So So we have to understand two things. So there is absorption in sense gratification causes bondage. Absorption in Krishna, absorption in bhakti takes us back home, back to God. Mm. So it is mind is the cause of material existence and liberation also. For us, liberation means going back to Krishna and with serving him in the spiritual world. So we have to engage in vyabhicharena bhakti yogena. Mm. So Prabhupada actually translates the same words differently. Okay, here it is the same thing. Vyabhicharena means without fail. What are the means of attaining the transcendental position? One should not be disturbed by the activities of the modes of nature. Instead of putting his consciousness into such activities, he may transfer his consciousness to Krishna activities. One should not be disturbed by the activities of modes of nature. One should not put his consciousness into such activities. We should transfer consciousness to Krishna activities. If one engages himself in the service of Krishna or his planetary expansions with unfailing determination, although these modes are very difficult to overcome, one can overcome them easily. Daivi Yesha Gunamai Mamamaya Dudatyaya Mameva Ye Prapadyante. One who surrenders unto Krishna at once surmounts the influence. Okay. If one is situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. Uh, so we have to be in the same transcendental position to serve the Supreme Lord. This is Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. That qualification is to become Brahman or freed from all material contamination. Brahmaiva san Brahmapi eti. One can attain the Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. So thing is that mind has to be engaged in devotional service. Mind should not become absorbed in material activities for sense gratification. When mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering. And when detached from material sense gratification, or when attached to Krishna, it brings about uh, ultimate liberation. So the important thing is how do we engage the mind? Like yesterday also we were discussing, it's not enough if we just engage in activities of bhakti. It is important for the mind to be absorbed in the activities. Yeah. Any questions? I saw devotees unmuting, muting, so I'm not sure.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Prabhu, in the line it is mentioned, instead of putting his conscious into such activities,
Yeah.
he may transfer. So, putting his conscious into such activity, in the sense, we will face some activities, no, Prabhu. Uh, we
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
our mind, so that, can you explain, Prabhu, like how?
No, I didn't understand your question.
Prabhu, here it is mentioned, one should not be disturbed by the activities of three modes of nature. So now
Right.
we understood, yes, when we are in Krishna consciousness and we are engaged in devotional service, we will get that spiritual strength to overcome these three modes down the line.
Mm.
That
Mm.
is understood. But instead of putting his consciousness into such activities, he may transfer his consciousness to Krishna activities. But we will face some situations where, uh, still, even though we know the truth, we may unknowingly get into those. I mean, our conscious goes into that situation. uh, what to do at that time, Prabhu?
Asking when we become, without knowingly, we become absorbed in material activities. Is that
Yes,
what you're
Prabhu.
asking?
Yeah, Prabhu. Sometimes. Then after that, we will realize, oh, why
What is the
I have.
example?
For example, like if we are in midst of non-devotees, suddenly they say something which is not in shastras in line.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be like we will try to overpower them. No, no, it is like this in shastra. Then it will be like they will feel offended, but we are saying the right thing only. Then I will realize like, oh, why I try to overpower them.
But that's not wrong. As in overpower, as in we should try to tell based on person willingness to hear, situation, etc. We can tell the truth where required. That has nothing. That is not material. As in that is Krishna conscious activity. That is not a material activity. No, there the consciousness is not in. If the consciousness was material, then you would have also spoken in the same line as what they are speaking. Because your consciousness is in Krishna, you are trying to tell them what they are thinking is not correct. So where is their material absorption there?
Okay, okay. Fine. I thought like because why I understood like that, when we see people, we should not get to in their modes. Like if we take the example of Jada Bharata, when we try to communicate with people, so could be people will be there in mode of passion or mode of ignorance. When we talk to them, we should be not indulge ourselves into their modes.
Yeah,
That
we
is
should
the
not get
reason.
influenced by them. That's all.
Okay, okay, bro. Yeah. Thanks,
See,
bro.
when we get influenced by material consciousness, that is what needs to be avoided. Uh, Krishna consciousness might manifest as not so pleasing sometimes, meaning like this in case, right? Suppose say you are trying to explain to somebody that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and they don't want to accept it. No, it might not be a pleasing exchange, but it is a required exchange if the person is not an atheist. Right? So sometimes Krishna conscious activities might not just come across as very pleasing and happy, especially preaching, right? But that's okay. That's we are still doing that for the pleasure of Krishna. So that should not be seen as a material activity, just because there are some kind of material kind of feeling that we might be experiencing. Okay. Anyway, so main point here is the mind should not get absorbed in material sense gratification. That is the important thing here. So we have to be very careful. And the way to do that is that we don't fall down in any circumstance. We engage in full devotional service and we do not fall down in any circumstance. So fall down in any circumstance can mean two things. One is even though we might, one is not coming down at all from our, from the from the transcendental platform, not coming down to material platform at all. Second is apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak. So sometimes there might be a fall down, still not going away from devotion or continuing our devotion in a fixed way. Both are possible, but the not falling down itself is what we should aim for. That means, irrespective of what the situation is, we always remain on the transcendental platform. Our mind might push us to do some nonsense, but um, we should try mm, by to remain on the spiritual platform. एकादश सन्मनसोषि वृत्तया आकूतयः पञ्चधियोऽभिमानः मात्राणि कर्माणि पुरं च तासां वदन्ति हैकादश वीरभूमि. There are five working senses and five knowledge acquiring senses. There is also false ego. In this way, there are 11 items for the mind's functions. O hero, the objects of the senses, the organic activities such as evacuation, and the different types of bodies, society, friendship, and personality are considered by learned scholars the fields of activity for the functions of the mind. Um, Asan manasa hi vrittaya, activity for vritti or activities. Diyaha abhimanaha matrani karmani puram cha tasam vadanti. Yeah, so all these are the fields of activity, meaning through these 11 things we will engage, our mind will engage in doing some things. Mind is a controller of 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses. Each sense has its particular field of activity. In all cases, mind is a controller or owner. By the false ego, one thinks oneself the body and thinks in terms of my body, my house, etc. These false identifications are due to expansions of false ego. Thus, one thinks that he is this or that. Thus, the living entity becomes entangled in material existence. So, basically, this is the field of action of the mind, field of mind's activity. All these knowledge acquiring senses, then working senses, false ego. So, this is how we get absorbed in material life. Gandhakriti sparsha rasasvamsi विसर्गरत्यर्थ्यभिजल्पशिल्पाः एकादशं स्वीकरणं ममेति सय्याम् अहं द्वादशम् एकाहुः. Sound, touch, form, taste and smell are the objects, tanmatra. Speech, touch, movement, evacuation and sexual intercourse are the objects of the working senses. Besides this, there is another conception by which one thinks this is my body, this is my society, this is false ego. This is false ego. According to some philosophers, that is the 12th function and its field of activity is the body. So again, same thing is being explained. Dravya स्वभावाश्रय कर्मकालेर एकादशामि मनसो विकाराः सहस्रशः ततः कोटिशश्च क्षेत्रज्ञतो न मिथो न स्वतः स्युः. Physical elements, nature, original cause, culture, destiny, and the time element are all material causes. Agitated by these material causes, the 11 functions transformed into hundreds of functions and then into thousands and then into millions. But all these transformations do not take place automatically by mutual combination. Rather, they are under the direction of the Supreme Person of Godhead. So physical elements, material nature, original cause, which is our original karma, then our culture, destiny, so many things cause us to act in different ways. So finally, this verse is saying all these transformations do not take place automatically. They are under the direction of the Supreme Lord. One should not think that all the interactions that cause the transformation of mind and consciousness are working independently. They're under the direction of the Supreme Person of Godhead. Tena vina trinopi na chalati. Krishna says that he is situated in everyone's heart. Sarvasya tam hridi sannivishtaha. As mentioned here in Super Soul, Kshetragna is directing everything. The living entity is also Kshetragna, but the Kshetragna is the Supreme Person of Godhead. He is the witness and order giver, Hanumanta Upadrishta. Under his direction, everything takes place. The different inclinations of the living entity are created by his own nature or his expectations, and is trained by the Supreme Lord through the agency of material nature. So, through material nature, the Lord does actions. The body, nature, and physical elements are under the direction of the Supreme Lord. They do not function automatically. Neither is there. Nature is neither independent nor automatic. Maya dikshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kauntaya jagad viparivartate. Material nature is working under my direction. So yeah, nothing is independent. Everything is under the control of under the direction of the Supreme Lord. But as Paramatma, he doesn't interfere with our independence. Meaning, if you want to fall into the well, he will Anumanta Upadrishta. He will sanction. But as a Supreme Lord has given Shastra, Acharyas, who come and tell that, okay, see, this is not good to fall into the well. But as Paramatma himself, he will not, he might give intelligence for those who want. But for those who want to fall into the well, he will give intelligence to fall nicely into the well. But this happens also based on our previous karma. And our the culture, the vasanas that we have, the nature we have acquired. Based on the nature we have acquired, we will end up doing some things. And the Paramatma might say, no, no, see, this is not good for you. But still, we might go ahead and do because we want to be independent. Mm. Mm. So, two things. Paramatma is Anumanta, he permits, and Upadrushta, he oversees. But before permitting, he might try to remind us, saying that it's not good for us. But if we still persist, then he will permit, and then we have to suffer the reactions of that action, for which again um, he will remind us, and he will all the karmic reactions also come to us. Um, so he is the overseer. He's seeing, okay, this action has been done, this suffering has to happen. So he is overseeing everything. So everything is under the direction of the Paramatma. Please note, Paramatma is different from Bhagavan. Paramatma is just a expansion of Bhagavan, just with some specific, very limited role to play in this material world. Okay, but everything is under, so everything in the material world is under the direction of the Paramatma. Mm. So that's why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna saying, surrender unto Paramatma, surrender utterly unto him. Uh, this is for at least those who can understand that, okay, there's Paramatma, Paramatma is taking care of everything. He is the all powerful, so I should surrender unto him. But those who know Bhagavan, they can surrender to Bhagavan directly. क्षेत्रज्ञ एता मनसो विभूतिर्जीवस्य माया रचितस्य नित्या आविर्हिता क्वापि तिरोहिताश्च शुद्धो विचष्टे हि अविशुद्धकर्तुः. The individual soul, bereft of Krishna consciousness, has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy. They have been existing from time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the wakening state and in the dream state, but during deep sleep or trance, they disappear. A person who is liberated in this life can see all these things vividly. Hmm? The individual soul, bereft of Krishna consciousness, many material ideas and activities. They've been existing from time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the wakening state and sometimes in dream state, but during deep sleep, they disappear. Person who is liberated can see all these things. I stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kshetragnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. The two kinds of Kshetragna, one is the individual Kshetragna and then Parama Kshetragna. Ordinary Jiva knows about his body, but Supreme Paramatma knows the condition of all bodies. The individual living being is localized and Paramatma is all pervading. In this loka, the word Kshetragna refers to an ordinary living being, not the supreme living being. Ordinary living being is of two kinds, Nityabaddha, Nityamukta. One is eternally conditioned, the other eternally liberated. The eternally liberated living beings are in the Vaikuntha Jagat and they never fall into the material world. Those in the material world are conditioned souls, Nityabaddha. Nityabaddhas can become liberated by controlling the mind because the cause of conditioned life is the mind. Hmm. When the mind is trained and the soul is not under the mind's control, soul can be liberated even in the material world. Hmm. Very, very important things. Mind is trained and the soul is not under the mind's control. Then we can become liberated. So both things have to be happen. Have to happen. Hmm. When it is liberated, one is called Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta knows how he has become conditioned. Therefore, he tries to purify himself and return home back to Godhead. The eternally conditioned soul is eternally conditioned because he is controlled by the mind. The conditioned state and liberated state are compared to the sleeping, unconscious state and the awakened state. The conditioned state is compared to the sleeping unconscious state, and liberated state to the awakened state. Those who are sleeping and unconscious are eternally conditioned, but those who are awake understand that they are eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, even in this material world, they engage in Krishna's service, as confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Yaha yasya hare dasya. One takes to Krishna's service is liberated, even though he appears to be conditioned soul within the material world. So for us, we should understand we don't actually completely qualify to these statements, right? We are not Jivan Mukta in the sense that we are not actually liberated, but because uh, we are engaged. If one takes to Krishna service, he is liberated, even though appears to be conditioned soul. So we are liberated, but we are not liberated. Hmm. We are liberated in the sense because we have taken shelter of Krishna. That's the highest platform of liberation. But still we have anarthas, so we appear to be conditioned. And the process is to actually clean up, purify our existence. So here also is a very interesting statement, difficult to understand. And the mind is trained, and the soul is not under the mind's control. So the mind has to be trained not to get absorbed in material activities. But for us, there is no separate training. It's all by the activities of Krishna consciousness and by hearing tattva. Mm. By hearing tattva, we might still not have the strength to control the mind. So, but when we engage in activities of bhakti, then the mind becomes trained to think about Krishna. So, chanting, for example, the process of focusing the mind on the name of Krishna, or reading Shastra, focusing the mind on and trying to understand Shastra. So, the mind is being trained to absorb in non-material activities. This is the training process. Yoga, Indriya Samyama, mind controlling process, bhakti, right? Or yoga. And then soul is not under the mind's control. So, soul also, by the process of bhakti, the soul, which is now somewhat, um, we say conditioned soul, which basically means that it is accepted this false ego, body as oneself, and comes under the control of the mind. So when the mind is trained, automatically soul also is freed from that control. Because the mind is not, in the sense from the material control. The mind is materially involved, and because of false ego, soul is also under the mind's control. Meaning soul is not in control, mind is in control because of false ego. But when the mind is trained, mind becomes purified, and then the mind, even though mind is in control, mind can take the soul to Krishna when the mind is trained. Or the other way of looking at it is when we do bhakti, because the soul, yeah, soul becomes freed from this conditioning of thinking that I am this body, and then soul can also, soul becomes liberated. So both ways it works. So bhakti works on both, on false ego, on mind, on intelligence, and frees up the soul. But the important thing is for us to engage the mind, absorb the mind in activities of bhakti. So a little bit complicated purports. Actually, the soul, because of false ego, the soul is in this conditioned, contaminated consciousness. The soul, the characteristic of soul is consciousness, but this consciousness now contaminated because soul has accepted the body as itself, as in forgotten the existence of soul and thinking that the body itself is self. So then that is a false ego, and because of false ego, and the mind is working for false ego. So, and mind is in control because of the false ego. So the false ego has to be converted back to real ego. Uh, Again, solution for all these problems is bhakti. Just that I'm trying to explain the philosophy, underlying philosophy. So we should absorb our mind in Krishna consciousness. That is the important part. Because the mind is the problem. It's not just the activity of bhakti. Of course, the activity of bhakti will also give us some phala, some fruit. Because we are doing something for the pleasure of Krishna, and that fruit will actually free the mind or purify the mind. Mm. But if we absorb ourselves also, then the effect will be faster. So there are two ways in which we can engage in devotional activities. One is either with absorption, the other is without absorption. Without absorption also, because the activities of bhakti themselves are uh, pure, punya activities are purifying. Uh, Actually, they are punya, highest form of punya. Um, so that result will also come to us just by engaging in the activity. But if we absorb ourselves, then the effect will be faster, will be more. Hmm. The eternally conditioned soul is eternally conditioned because he is controlled by the mind. Again, so all of this is connection. Connection is the connection between the mind and soul is false ego. So we should understand this. Mind is working for false ego, and false ego is influencing the soul. Hmm. Hmm. So if the false ego has to be broken, as in that that we are not this body, that we are servants of Krishna. It's difficult to understand that we are not the body. It's easier to understand we are servants of Krishna. Hmm. That is a bhakti process. So when we engage ourselves in the activities of Krishna, automatically the conception of the bodily conception will go. But if we keep thinking, saying that I'm not the body, I'm not the body, we cannot really understand. That's why Prabhupada says that we have to engage in the activities of the soul, so which is bhakti. So just by engaging in bhakti, automatically we will understand that we are not the body, but not the other way around. It's very difficult. It is the Gnana Marga. The Gnana Marga is knowing that, oh, I'm not the body, then coming to the platform doing bhakti. But for us, it's the other way around. We just come to bhakti. So we are engaging in activities of bhakti. And because of the activities of bhakti, Gnanam cha yadhaitukam. Gnana will happen, Vairagya will happen as the effects of doing bhakti. Hmm. Okay, is this clear? Bit not sure if I was clear.
Prabhuji, here I was trying to connect. Just tell me, is it right? Like, it's difficult to understand soul being not controlled by the mind. Can we link it to that sthit pragya symptoms, like Arjuna asks Lord in chapter 2?
Okay,
Uh,
what I didn't
can
understand,
we link?
Mataji.
Okay, how do we know that? Like, if we want to know the symptoms of a person whose soul is not under the mind's control, so can
Hmm.
we relate it to sthit pragya symptoms?
No, we can just relate to a pure devotee. Sthita prajna is just a Jivan Mukta state. I mean, it's just a liberated state. But Krishna is not actually talking about the qualities of a devotee in the Sthita Prajna conversation. For us, it's much easier to just think about a pure devotee, like Srila Prabhupada, right? So Srila Prabhupada all the time, he was completely, his consciousness was completely in Krishna, right? So there is no false ego. Each and every moment he was on the platform of thinking of himself as a servant of Krishna. Never thought of himself as a boss. Even though he had so many, he was Jagat Guru, but he never thought he was the boss. He always remembered he's the servant, Krishna is the boss. Right? So if we just study the lives of all these great souls, we can understand that because they are engaged in activities of in Krishna conscious activities, the way they behave, everything we can understand that they are completely freed from this material conception. So
Yes.
in the life of a pure devotee, the mind cannot misdirect because the soul is in control. So when the mind comes up with some nonsense, the soul will just reject it, saying that this is nonsense. This is not what a servant needs to do.
Yes,
Mm,
Prabhuji. Prabhuji, otherwise soul is powerful, but we have made it like weak by control of
yeah,
mind.
we by our
We have,
desire to enjoy independent of Krishna, by our desire for sense gratification, we have weakened our position and we put ourselves under the control of false ego, under the influence of false ego, and thereby the control of the mind
yes, Prabhuji.
because of our desire. But because the soul is qualitatively equal to Krishna, it is super powerful. Mm, at least in the realm of the body, it's definitely has more power uh, than the mind. It has the power to overrule the mind. But because we are choosing not to exercise that power, like yeah, like Arjuna. Arjuna was he was such a great archer, but he didn't want to fight. So when somebody doesn't want to fight, then what is the use of his abilities? No use. So similarly, the soul is powerful, but we don't want the because we are happy with this false ego. We are happy with the activities of sense gratification. So we don't want to overpower. But the spiritual path is to understand that the mind is our enemy and to overpower the mind to engage in Krishna conscious activities. That okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody has any? Yeah, the purport was slightly complicated. Hmm. But summary, sum and substance is that so mind is our enemy. Mind is materially absorbed. Um, then our whole because our consciousness is contaminated. So mind, intelligence, both absorbed materially, right? And all this is because of the false ego. And the soul literally has no role to play because soul is thinking that okay, so influenced by false ego, thinking mind and intelligence working for me, right? Because soul wants to enjoy sense gratification, but though the soul cannot enjoy sense gratification because the soul is spiritual, but being influenced by false ego, soul is thinking that okay, body is now uh, the means for my sense gratification. So it has given complete control to mind and false ego. And mind and false mind and intelligence, both materially engrossed and engaging us in all kinds of material activities, good, bad, ugly. So when we engage and when automatically mind gets absorbed in material activities. If the mind, if we have to pull this out, it's a complete reversal process. The reversal process actually requires the soul to become strong, to realize that okay, I am being cheated, I am being misled by this false ego, and that I have to stop the activities now, reverse the activities of mind and intelligence. Now that is much easy when we are engaged in activities of bhakti, where the both the mind and intelligence are engaged. Like yesterday I was saying, so the subtle body can be engaged in bhakti, gross body can be engaged in bhakti. If the subtle body is engaged in bhakti, then mind and intelligence both are engaged in bhakti, both get purified. So when both get purified, then automatically in course of time, false ego vanishes, real ego makes its presence. That means the understanding that I am the servant of Krishna, and that the control that the mind has had goes down because the mind becomes purified and actually starts engaging in Krishna conscious activities, doesn't push us to engage in material activities. But it takes a long time for us to reach there because of our long conditioning. So we have to engage in bhakti, engage in association of devotees, and hope and pray for mercy so that we don't get stuck. Because every now and then the mind will come up with some nonsense. Even though mind is getting purified, still there are some things which are not so good, which are coming from our past vasanas, desires, etc., which is coming and which can trouble us, right? So that those times we have to be very, very careful what we do. So if we have experienced a higher taste, then we should kind of try to engage ourselves in that higher taste. Because then that higher taste will give us higher happiness, then this lower sense gratificatory happiness will not pull us. So that is a fall down process. The fall down process is that when the mind comes up with something which is material, of material nature, but which we seem to have enjoyed in the past, false enjoyment, but we have enjoyed that in the past. And now that enjoyment, when the mind brings up that thought, we feel that, oh, okay, no, this is nice. Actually, I can enjoy. But we should understand that this is just cheating. And then we should somehow take shelter of Krishna, Krishna's devotees, bhakti, Krishna's holy name, and try to avoid getting influenced by mind. So by the process of bhakti, normally like 85% of our anarthas go off very easily. And then we will be stuck with some one or two anarthas for a long time. We have to keep struggling to get over those anarthas. But the process of bhakti will take us out. Just that we should not keep succumbing to the cheating of the mind. Yeah. Is that okay? Hare Krishna. There any doubts? Clear, huh? Okay. Okay, then we'll stop here. मंत्रा श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, समवेत गौरव भक्तवृंद की जय. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. This was very
Hare
helpful.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Rather than telling your, because that's very difficult all the time to be in the conscious